Shalom Aleichem Rabbi Yid.
Jacob, how are you?
Baruch Hashem.
Good to see you.
It's good to see you. Every single time you seem to be in a different place.
I'm just like a mobile wizard.
Apparently. How have you been?
Pretty good.
Baruch Hashem.
Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. Yes. It is a new week. A
Indeed.
whole new week.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's very excited about you making Kiddush in Chicago.
Really? Is that a thing?
It's a huge thing.
Yeah?
Yeah, I just made it a thing.
Nice.
I did mention it to Sam, and apparently Charlie's going to be there. I got all the stuff to make Kiddush on when we did our fishing trip a few years ago. I even had benchers printed up.
Really?
Did you know there are Bridges of Meaning benchers?
Wow. I had no idea.
Yep.
It's funny when I was in what conference was it? The one in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
So they made Havdalah on Motzi Shabbos. So they called me in to be an aide to the Havdalah. It was really funny.
Who made Havdalah?
Nate's wife made Havdalah.
Oh, okay. Very interesting.
It was really sweet. So I was like the other.
Women aren't allowed to make Havdalah.
Say it again.
Women can't make Havdalah.
That's not the conversation I'm getting into. But I'm just saying that it was really sweet. I was outside talking to someone. They called me in. We're making Havdalah. So it was really sweet.
Yeah. Havdalah has become a huge thing among the Reform.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, Havdalah is interesting because you say Beinor Lechoshech,
Bein Israel v'Amim. Did they say that part? Did they realize?
No, but that you're getting in so much trouble. But the idea of the differentiation, I think, is a very powerful idea.
Yes, it's a huge and important idea.
Yeah.
I actually I was considering streaming today. If I ever get my homework done, I will. I might just do that. About the whole Ted Cruz thing.
Tucker Carlson?
Yeah. What?
With Tucker Carlson?
Yeah. But I'm sorry to tell you, but yes, there is a chosen people in the world. I hate to tell you that, but Zapashut.
Yeah, but he should have known that he would have gotten crushed by Tucker to say that, because it's so easy to basically, because Tucker's responses to that were very fair, let's call it. I'm not saying he's right.
I didn't even watch it.
You didn't watch it? Okay.
I watched parts of it. It was just too upsetting.
Saying that to Tucker is like a softball, it's so easy.
That's because these are conversations we have not properly had.
Correct.
It's not because there aren't answers. Ted Cruz. He asked Ted Cruz, how many people live in Iran? Well, do you know anything about Iran? Do you know anything about Iran? You know nothing about Iran. And it's I'm sorry, Tucker. I know a lot more about Iran than you do. You could still catch me out on a few facts, I'm sure. But Ted Cruz understands the situation much better than you do. So shut that,
Of course. But in general, if you're going to get into a conversation with Tucker, you have to obviously know your audience. And you can't give him such an easy way to crush him.
If you knew what Tucker was going to ask about, right? No,
to bring up biblical motivations to Tucker Carlson about the reason why you want to, engage in war is a very bad idea. Is my point. That's my only point.
Tucker knows nothing about Christianity.
Fair enough. I don't know one way or the other, but I'm coming from a strategic perspective. You're gonna get yourself in trouble if you're gonna bring it up.
First of all, he didn't bring it up. It was Tucker who was going down that whole thing.
You're talking about his motivations for protecting Israel, and I would not talk about that driver when you're talking to Tucker Carlson.
Just lie.
Especially in today's climate.
So lie.
Not lie, but you don't need to say that reason. You could say
Why?
he did say other reasons.
Hold on, but it's the reason.
No, it's one of his drivers. It's not the only
No,
driver.
no. It's the reason. The
Okay.
entire reason the state of Israel exists is because there are 40 million evangelical Christians who believe it is their religious obligation.
Got it.
Right? So yeah, no, and not talking about this stuff, it
Right.
causes more problems than actually knowing what you're talking about and talking about it.
Right. Yeah. I think it's Jordan Peterson on the thumbnail every time.
Well, that's the point. That's what I told Grok to make, but it was. It's not exactly Jordan Peterson, thank God, because then Grizz would be here claiming that I was whatchamacallit, I was failing to deliver on the thumbnail. Okay, we should actually learn some Torah.
Let's do it.
Not that this isn't Torah, but this is.
Yeah, we got into just chatting. We did a 2-for-1 deal.
You should come on Just Chattings more often. Especially when I'm making fun of what was that Ritter guy?
No, I have no idea. Who?
Yes,
that was fun. Oh my gosh.
There was a Mearsheimer discussion, which was almost as much fun. Oh my god. Anyway, where were we? What were we doing?
Where do you want to start from? Because we basically finished the Gemara. We're up to like the next piece, or we're almost finished.
Finished the Gemara? You mean the Mishnah?
No, we got through. We got through the Mishnah. Then we almost finished this first part of the Gemara. If you want, we could just we could start again from the beginning, or we could, meaning from the beginning of the Gemara, or we could just try to say it outside and then and start from the next 2 dots, basically.
Try to say it outside. Okay, I don't know enough to say it outside. What are you saying outside? No, go ahead. Say it outside.
No, I'm gonna cheat. But just to talk it out, and then we can decide if we want to run through it again. Basically, that's what I'm thinking.
There was a time when I would be able to sit there and when I was still in my 20s, I might be able to say the Shakalantaria of something outside for half a daf, but we don't live in that time anymore.
It's never too late. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So the Mishnah started by saying Dinim Mamanos B'Shlosha, Gazelos and Chavelos B'Shlosha. So monetary items you need 3 judges, and for stealing and for damages you also need 3 judges.
Yeah.
So the Gemara says, so if you have Gazelos, the Chavelos isn't stealing and damages included in Dinim Mamanos. Why does the Mishnah need to separate it?
Yeah.
So Ravo explains that really it's a explanation, right? So the Gazelos and Chavelos are elucidating what the Mishnah is referring to when it says Mamanos, and it's to the exclusion of loan disputes.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Gemara says, and we needed to say money and the category of damages and robbery. Why? Because if it just said money, then you would think it would even includes loan disputes. It includes everything. If you would just say the term mammon, just money. And if you would say only gazelos and chavelos, if you would say it's just the stealing and the damages, and don't say money at all, you would think that it also applies to loan disputes. And the only reason why it specifies stealing is because the pasuk of where we learn to have 3 judges is spoken about when in the topic of stealing. Mm-hmm. But really it applies to everything. So the Gemara is showing that that regardless whether you say mamanos or whether you say just or stealing and robbery, you would still think that it applies to loan disputes. Therefore, the Mishnah had to say both, so you know that it does not apply to loan disputes. And then So then the Gemara continues and says, but are we really so sure that you don't need three for loan disputes? But because we quote another statement from Rabbi Avo where he says when two people adjudicate a case, it's not considered a good case, right?
Right.
It's not considered. So in other words, this establishment of saying that it doesn't apply by loan disputes doesn't actually make sense because there even
Okay, maybe I'm getting too much on the inside, but explain to me. Okay, so it says V'nikra bal habayit el haElohim chavalot mali chavel begufo mali chavel b'mamona.
Right.
And then it says Tana Mahen. So is it asking there, like, let's go back to the Mishnah? What how do you read that? Tana Mahen dine mamnot gazelot v'chavelot aval hodaot v'halvaot lo. Like, let it teach Tana Mahen dine mamnot gazelot v'chavelot.
Therefore, Tana, because the primary source is by stealing, right? That's the primary source. And Mali Chavabuho, Mali Chavamona. What's the difference between those? There's no difference between those two. And therefore, the primary source is by those cases, right? The primary source of needing three judges is by stealing and by damages, right? That's the primary source of needing three judges. So therefore, Mahain Dine Mamanos, therefore the Mishnah has to say which Dine Mamos specifically are we referring to?
Okay, what does that word Tana mean there?
It means it's referring to the Mishnah. That the Mishnah needs to teach Mahain Dine Mamos. What are these Dine Mamanos?
Okay.
It's specifically Gazelas and Chavelas, specifically the stealing and the damages.
Okay.
But that does not apply, right? Because if it just says so again, if it just said mamanos, you would think it applies across the board. It just says stealing and damages, you would also think it applies across the board. The only reason why it says such a specific case is just because that's where the primary source is that you need three judges.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think I got it.
But then the Gemara continues and says, but if that's the case, that you don't need three by loan disputes, but we know Rav Avo himself, and remember, this whole Gemara is in the world of Rav Avo, right? Rav Avo himself says that if you have two, it's not considered a good case. So this entire hypothesis here makes no sense, because the conclusion is that you wouldn't need three for loan disputes, but we know Rav Avo doesn't think that any case where there's just two judges, it's not going to work. So therefore, the Gemara has to say this new idea that really you need three, but it does not need to be mumchim, right? It doesn't need to be expert judges. It can be just any person, let's just say for right now.
Yeah. That's very strange. I mean, now I'm tempted to look. I mean, it's brought lahalacha shnaim shadanu dinei mamanot l'divrei hakol ein dineim din is apparently brought in halacha by everybody. Rambam, Tur Shulchan Aruch. But we don't say that. Well, I guess we don't require. We only require one dayan and two smuchim.
I have no idea. How does it work nowadays? I have no idea how it works. Like a bezdin.
Well, you need one dayan and two smuchim. So,
what category is a dayan and two smuchim? Are they considered mumchim? How does it work?
No. The smuchim don't. You've made it betei din for stuff just regular like Hatar Nadarim, right?
Yeah, is that considered a Batei Din, a Tar Sadarim?
It's a Beit Din of Hedyot. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, the thing is, nowadays everybody is a Hedyot. We don't have proper smicha, right?
Okay.
So we only do those things that you can do with a Hedyot, right? And we require that one of them be a Dayan because he should at least know something, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes down to it, there's no such thing as a proper Beit Din nowadays.
Interesting.
That was the whole thing with the Sanhedrin and trying to revive smicha, etc., etc., etc. a few years ago.
I'm completely have no
You
idea.
you didn't hear about this?
No.
So a few years ago, the Zionists, God have mercy on their souls,
Yeah.
decided that they wanted to revive smicha. There's been a few attempts over the years because we believe that you can only do smicha within Eretz Yisrael anyway, and that proper smicha for Moshe Rabbeinu was lost.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's a dot of most dayas, I would say, is that Eliyahu Hanavi obviously has smicha, and therefore he can come and revive smicha anytime he wants.
Mm-hmm.
But there's an opinion of the Rambam, which is somewhat your friend Daniel Mercer is here.
Daniel.
He's
a great guy.
It's not Daniel?
Daniel. No. We met in Connecticut. Lovely guy.
So there's an opinion of the Rambam, which apparently also the Rav Yosef Cairo tried to use it, which is that if all of the Chachamim of a generation agree, they can create they can give someone smicha and it'll be smicha, right? So what they tried to do was they sent letters to every single person you could possibly think of being a rabbi, and asked supposedly 80,000 rabbis, right? And all of them agreed that this one person was ra'ui to be a rabbi, but because of the controversy, they didn't say who it was. And so this one person supposedly got smicha, and this person gave smicha to, starting with Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz, right? He was the first publicly known member of this new Sanhedrin. And they gave some 70 people smicha. There are people who are actually kind of, because when he died, they revealed that the person who got smicha and gave it to a few other people was, I believe his name was Rabbi Moshe Halberstam. He was the Av Beit Din of Eda Haredit.
Mm-hmm.
Because the people who were trying to make it happen were all Zionists, right? And the people who didn't want it to happen, who didn't want to get involved, were Eda Haredit and that type. So the decision was that, if I remember correctly, his name was Halberstam, that he could have smicha, and nobody objected to that. Which, frankly, if you're going to pick one person that nobody's going to object to, and you get the Zionists not to object, it's perfect, right?
Right. Interesting.
And then what happened was that they tried to make this, they called it the nascent Sanhedrin or the new Sanhedrin. And Rabbi Steinsaltz became the Nasi. He became the head of this Sanhedrin. And half of the Sanhedrin wouldn't publicly proclaim who they were. And the ones who did, they weren't the greatest of people. And their whole thing was, if anybody else is willing to join, who's greater than them, they'll step aside, right? And what eventually happened was that Rabbi Steinsaltz ended up resigning in protest, and the whole thing fell apart. Now there are a few people who still claim to be making it run, but it's not even as big as it was back then. So it's basically gone. But one good thing that did come out of it was they set up a Beit Din for Bnei Noach, a specific Beit Din for Bnei Noach. And the Av Beit Din, Rabbi Schwartz, was somebody who learned at Panovich seriously, was a very respected person, and he issued a lot of Piskei Din for Bnei Noach. So that's the one good thing that's come out of it. And apparently they're trying to keep the smicha respectable, because it's the closest thing we have to actual smicha nowadays. But yeah, they didn't announce Rabbi Halberstam until he had passed away already. So if you want real smicha, you can go find somebody who got smicha from Rabbi Halberstam and see if you can become an actual Rav. But vast majority of people don't even hold of that, because the whole thing was a little strange.
Listen, if you're gonna have, yeah, I don't know. It's definitely a weird. I mean, I feel like the people say, like, when, like, you know, like the last generation, there was still real smicha, I think, or like 2 generations ago. I thought that was like a thing. At least maybe it was meaningful. Maybe it wasn't like halachic, but it was meaningful.
There are people
maybe
who,
that's what it means.
Yeah, there are people who say, if you know, back then it meant something. Nowadays it doesn't mean anything. There are people who are even more dismissive of modern day smicha than they used to be.
Sure.
But ultimately, we don't believe we have real smicha. Orthodox Jews don't.
Got it.
Except Eliyahu Navi. So if next time Eliyahu Navi shows up, ask him if he'll give you smicha, and we'll have smicha again.
And I see Michael thought that the thumbnail was a real Jordan Peterson, a Jewish Jordan Peterson version. That is disappointing.
Isn't it? When one of these days, I anticipate Jordan Peterson will bump onto our Talmud studies, become so engrossed in it that he'll contact us and say, I want you to tutor me in Talmud.
I'm actually, one of the biggest reasons why I'm so excited to learn the Talmud again, and especially with you, is that because it's become such a big deal on social media, and to think about that, this is what they're talking about. It's literally hysterical. Like, can you imagine if, like, one of these people on social media would learn this Gemara? Like, it's literally the most technical and annoying piece of literature you can actually read.
It's beyond that. So Safaria has a visualization of all the places that the Talmud quotes the Torah.
Yeah.
Like, to believe half of the stupid things people do, you can't possibly have read even 2 whole pages of the Talmud.
Of course.
Because, like, the entire thing is, it says in the Bible, therefore.
Yeah.
Right? But what? You think a little reading would stop people from being stupid?
No, but I am intrigued by the idea of, like, if someone would sit down and, like, actually go through a daf Gemara, like 2 pages of Gemara, and actually, like, go through it, I think it would really, like, shock them about how the Talmud actually speaks.
Even the parts which they like to pull up, like, I have gone through the Jesus burning in hell sugya so many times. I must have at least gone through it at least 5 or 6 times on this channel.
But see, that doesn't even interest me. I actually haven't learned those, and it doesn't interest me.
What do you mean? You were watching when I did one.
Yeah, I've seen, but I haven't gone through it myself. I'm saying, and my point is that what those types of like controversial Gemaras or whatever, like what percentage of it is that of the Talmud? Like we're talking about like it's silly, you know.
It's maybe 1 in 1,000 pages.
Right, and even if it
Literally
was,
1 in 1,000 pages.
yeah, and even if it was like clearly, if you learn the Gemara, you know, the Talmud for like 10 minutes, you'll see it's all just rigorous, you know, laws. That's all it is.
Look, you want to learn the controversial stuff? I'll learn the controversial stuff with you. Just
No,
actually learn
it's
it.
so much more fun.
No, the controversial stuff, fine. There's nothing wrong with controversy. Just learn it. Like,
For sure,
punch a shot, read what it says.
for sure.
Right?
And Michael's here. Hi, Michael. I don't know who Michael is.
You don't know Michael. Michael comes on my streams a lot.
Oh, I guess I'm not watching your streams enough, Jacob.
You apparently don't like me very much.
Okay.
Hold on. How can you not know Michael? Michael was a Chino. Michael came to my house.
Oh, really? Does Michael know me? Then I'd be really embarrassed.
Michael was a Chino.
There's a lot of people at Chino.
There were a lot of people at Chino.
Yeah.
I think Michael may have had to leave early as well. You didn't come at the very beginning. Yeah, he doesn't remember you either. So
Okay, I'm not so memorable. It's okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's keep going here.
Yeah.
So now we're getting into so the way so basically you can almost view it in like two steps essentially, right? So we're trying to understand why the Mishnah needs to say these two different sections: money and stealing / damages, and essentially the reason is just to exclude loan disputes. And if that's the case, though, it seems like we're indicating that loan disputes don't need two people, and we know that's not true because Ravo says that you need two is not considered a good court case. So that's like, if you want to say it in one sentence, that's how you could say it.
Yeah.
So then the Gemara says, "My kasavar," which we goes. So what's going on here? If you believe in Erev Parshios, which means that you're able to connect different segments of in Parshas Mishpatim, where we talk about all these different,
that you need to,
right? That you need to connect them, and therefore everyone needs to have 3 judges. Right? You should also need, and then in that case, you definitely should need mumchim here. You should need it, and it doesn't make sense to say you don't. And if you say that you don't need Erev Parshios, then you should also need. Then why would you need 3 at all? Right? So we're either settling for the fact that you don't need 3 or you don't need mumchim. You either don't need to have 3 judges or you don't need to have experts that are 3.
Right?
So
because if you don't believe in Erev Parshios, then you wouldn't even be able to learn out from Gezelot to Hodat v'Halvat.
I don't think it's exactly that connection. We have to go through this. It's a long Rashi. I don't think it's exactly that connection from Gezelos to Hadas V'Havlos. But if it's saying if you believe, let's leave out the Erev Parshas in terms of how how the sources work. But let's leave that out for a second. We can go back into that Rashi if you want to go through it again. Okay. But the idea here is that if you believe in Erev Parshios, that you should be able to make that juxtaposition. Then in that instance, you should need 3 and you should need mumchim, right? Which would hurt our Gemara's case here, right? If you need 3 and you need mumchim, right? Because then loan disputes can't fall into any category. And if you don't believe in Hadas V'Havlos, if you don't believe in Erev Parshios, then you shouldn't need 3 at all, right? You shouldn't need 3 mumchim or not mumchim. You shouldn't need 3 at all. And if that's where you're at,
Hodat v'Halvat.
Say it again.
You shouldn't need 3 mumchim for Hodat v'Halvat.
Correct. And if you're left with that, then again you have the same problem because Ravo says that 2 is not considered a good din.
L'divrei hakol.
Right. So how do we answer that problem? So we say la'olam. So really, we do need Erev Parshios. The Gemara continues. Really, we do need the Erev Parshios.
Mm-hmm.
we do believe in that, and therefore you do need 3. And the reason why we don't need mumchim here is because, and then it goes on to this next piece about Rabbi Chanina says that everything needs the same level of scrutiny in cases, whether it's matters of life and death, matters of monetary items. But the reason why, on the next page it continues, is the reason why we don't need it for monetary value is because we don't need we don't want to have that same level of scrutiny, because if we do, then you would close up the exchange between people. People are not going to start lending and doing different business deals because everything has such heavy scrutiny.
I mean, this is a shocking thing to say. To say that according to Torah you need 3 mumchim.
Correct.
But thus we say that the
3 mumchim and jushav chakir, you need to scrutinize the witnesses. According from the Torah, you're not allowed to do a business deal without having the cross-examination.
But the rabbis made a takana, not like that, in order to allow for there to be more loans.
Yeah, I mean, that itself is a crazy concept throughout Chazal, when the rabbis are basically undermining or overriding the Torah. It's kind of crazy.
Oh my God, these rabbis, they're always they don't care what the Torah says.
It's crazy. It really is amazing. I wonder how that came. Was that like through? I wonder how that works. Like how that happened.
Okay, you have to understand. Like this is basics of Yiddishkeit.
Yeah.
That the Torah has lots and lots of important values. So a few years ago, before you were around, 4 or 5 years ago, on Bridges of Meaning, there was a whole thing about interest and heter iska, right? So somebody said to me, "Okay, Jacob, like, tell me why do you have, like, how is this okay? The Torah says don't charge interest. So how is heter iska okay?" And I came up with what I think was a very brilliant answer, because I'm just a brilliant guy.
Confirmed.
Which is, I said, okay, let's not talk about what's in the verses right now. Let's talk outside, right? In real life, you have 2 very important things. One, when people lend money on interest, they can be truly abusing the other person, right?
Sure.
The other thing is, let's say you have somebody who's a very good carpenter, right? But he doesn't have tools. And you say to him, "Hey, tell you what, I'll give you $5,000. You set up a workshop and I'll buy you the wood, and you make beautiful furniture and sell it, right? And you pay me back." Now, I have to ask you, in that condition, what if that person doesn't want to take a loan? So real chesed, real caring about that person would be to say, "Hey, let's make a business. I'll give the capital,
Sure.
Right?" And that's the way that the Rabbanim want us to treat each other. And that's what heter iska is about. Okay? Mm-hmm. And all of the things, so okay, you want to read into the Torah the various things that the Torah has, right? And I have to point out to the Christians, as far as we know, Pruz Bowl was around during the time of Hillel HaZaken, and that was years before Jesus. And as far as we know, Jesus was not opposed to Prus Bowl or anything like that, right? So there's a concept of, we look at the world, we see Hakadosh Baruch Hu, what does he want in this world, right? And okay, so you're going to learn from this pasuk, you're going to learn from that pasuk, right? And that's what it means. Et lasot lasham heferu toratecha, right? Heferu literally means what does it mean to be tofer? It means to sow, right? When you patch things up, right? And sometimes you have to rip and sew, right? But the essence of it, and this is the difference between being a Pharisee, being a rabbinic Jew, and being a Karaite. The Karaites literally sit on Shabbos and they only eat cold food. They sit in the dark all Friday night until
Wait, is
Saturday.
Karaite like Tadukim? Is that the same difference? Or that's something different?
So the Karaites are only about 1,000 years old. So yeah, very similar, but they're only 1,000 years old. They don't actually go back all the way to the Tzedukah.
But they're focused on the biblical only, not.
Yeah, they're kofar in the Rabbanim. They right. They're sola scriptura Jews.
Got it.
Right. And it's like, okay, God gave you a reason. God gave you Rabbanim. God gave you, right. So why is it so important that we eat something hot on Saturday? Why do we eat cholent and chamin? It's actually it's a takana of Rabbanan that you must have something hot on like on summer, when I was very makpid, even it was summer, it was hot outside, I would still have something warm during the day on Shabbos. Right? Because it's a takana of the Rabbanan that by day Shabbos already you should still have something warm, right?
Yeah.
Because and frankly, this was one of the things with me about reading about Jesus, right? He's the most Talmudic person I've ever listened to. He really is.
Mm-hmm.
When you read him inside and you understand what the debates and stuff were about.
Sure.
So, yeah. Okay, you want to go inside to talk about why it's like this, why is it like that? Fine. But ultimately, right? We want to make God's kingdom the way God wants the world to be an actual thing in the world. And for it to be an actual thing in the world, you need to give loans to poor people. Because we see what happens when you don't do that. And if you can't live in the world, if you can't have that perspective of actually, this is Torah and I must live with it. Have you ever heard of the Shakers?
Is that a band?
No. It's a Christian religion that existed 100 years ago. The reason I know about
denomination, you mean? Like,
yeah.
Okay.
The reason I know about it was we had to read a book that was written by a Shaker in school. It was a fictional book, but that was their lifestyle. So they were called Shakers because they would actually literally shake in their congregations, right? Mm-hmm. They would shackle when they davened.
Nice.
But they didn't believe in having children. They didn't believe they believed that even people who are married should not have relations with each other. They thought that was the perfect way of being. Guess what? They're gone. Are you surprised?
Yeah, I could have called that. I'm not a betting man, but I could have called that one.
So they're gone, right? And that's it. Lador Vador is the essence of Yiddishkeit. This Yiddishkeit is this which God blesses that it should go from generation to generation. It should exist for thousands and thousands of years. That's what it means for emet here. Let's play Jacob's greatest hits. Right? So
I haven't seen this greatest hit.
What?
I haven't seen this greatest hit. Let's see it.
Okay, so where's the now I have to put my glasses on so I can actually see. Where's the so sheker ve'emet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So sheker ein lo reglayim. When you look at the word sheker, which is the one on top, all of the letters, if you were to actually form them, they would fall over. And emet is that which yesh lo reglayim. It has it's if you were to create it and it would stand. Right? And what do we know about emet? This is the Hebrew alphabet. So the first letter of emet is aleph, which is on the top right. And the last letter is taf, which is on the bottom left.
Right.
And the mem is right in the center, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because what is something that's emet? It's emet from the beginning through the middle all the way to the end. Now, where are all the letters of sheker?
Sheker is second to last, fourth to last, and third to last.
They're all one side. The whole point of emet, what does it mean to be true in Yiddishkeit? Means to be something that it's always true. It's throughout true. That is godly. It's when it falls over, when it's lopsided, when it's only a little bit, when it's part of the timeline, then it's sheker. And that's what it means that we live in Alma the Shikra, as opposed to Alma the Kshuta, right? What's Kshut? Kshut, true, that's Aramaic, not Hebrew, by the way. Kshut is that which is nitzchi. Lo yishaker netzach Yisrael.
Right. Nice.
I wish I could say it was my own creation, but
no, but you say it like, you make it your own. It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I'm serious. That was quite rabbinic. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Jacob's greatest hits. Nu weiter.
Okay. So where did we leave off now? So now we're saying that really Rabbi Avo does believe in darshaning eruv, and therefore he does think you need three. Like Mikar Adin, you would need to have three that are mumchim. And the reason why you don't is because he's actually latching on to Rabbi Chanina, who talks about how you would need to have, for whether it's matters of life and death, whether it's matters of monetary issues, you would need to have proper judges and you need to have cross-examinations. But because that would hamper people from actually being engaged in loans, therefore we don't require that, and that's how you're allowed to. You could have three, but not mumchim. So now this makes sense to say this answer to understand Rabbi Avo, right? So if you want to bring it all the way back from the beginning, basically, so the Mishnah says you have mamanos, gzelos, and chavelos. You need to say both of them, because if you don't say both of them, you would think it includes loan disputes. And now that you said both of them, it's to tell us that loan disputes they need three, but they don't need to be mumchim, as opposed to mamanos gzelos do need mumchim. That's where we stand right now. So then the next line of the Gemara continues. I think it's like a side question, but if that's the case, then you're going to have these people who are, if they make mistakes, they're not going to need to pay, right? Because they're not mumchim. and they're going to make a mistake and they're not going to need to pay. So the Gemara continues along the same lines. It's like, no, now that the rabbis are making this exclusion and sanctioning to not have mumchim, they will have to pay, because if they're not paying, then you're just going to exacerbate the same problem of where people are not going to engage if the judges have no accountability, right?
Say it inside.
So it says, Elamiyata Tolo Yishalmu, but now you're going to have a situation where these judges are going to make mistakes and they're not going to pay. So the Gemara says, no, Kol Shekenat to Noel Delis with Lavim. If you would do that, then you would have a worse situation, that people are not going to give loans because there's no what's the word? Shoot, what's that word? There's no what do you say when there's no like safety net?
Liability?
There's no one to hold accountable, right? So
Yeah.
you're going to have a situation with a court case with these people who are not mumchim, and there's no way of actually capturing your losses if they're making a mistake. So we're definitely not the rabbis will back these judges and say they do have to be responsible and pay if they make a mistake.
How are you seeing that inside?
If that's the case, that people are if we're gonna use these non-ordained judges, then to and lo yishalmu, that they're gonna if they make a mistake, they shouldn't need to pay, right?
Kol sheken atat noel delet bifnei lavin. You're making it worse. That's the question. I don't see your answer here.
Wait, let me see let me look at, hold on a second. Oh, is this what we saw last week? Let's go to Rashi. Elamiyadato had yotos b'nei mamnas lo yishalmu. The kaven deber shus rabbanan kai kanachti havelu kemumchem. Since they're doing it with the rabbanan like sanction, they're considered like mumchem. Chol mumchem bezdin imta pater milashalim. Oh, wait a second.
Yeah, I think Rashi is bringing. I mean, so Stam reading this Talmud, you would think that that it's because they're hedyot, they don't have to pay, but he's explaining no. Lakaman, we say that they don't have to pay.
Right, and it's saying, and it's explaining that. I think the Gemara is basically just quoting. It's basically asking from the Gemara on Lamed Gimel. I think that's what it's saying. That if that's the case, since they're not mumchim, if they make a mistake, they don't pay. I'm not sure if I'm understanding this piece, actually.
Are we going to have to go learn Lamed Gimel?
No, wait a second. Let's see. Elmiata Tola Yishalmu. You might have Chazi have to jump on to explain us these two lines here.
He was a Meshav of Yeshivat HaKotel.
Elmiata Tola Yishalmu. Kol Shekin to know Delis B'nei Lavim. Hedyotas B'nei Mamanis Lo Yishalmu. That Hedyotas, when it comes to Noas, do not pay. The Kavan de Rishus Rabbanan Kanachti, Havale Kamumchem, V'chol HaMumchem LeBezdin, Imta. So that's the Gemara. Anyone who's a Mumchem for Bezdin, if they make a mistake, they're putter from paying. But if you're not a Mumcha, then you are chayiv to pay. Um, was Lo Yishalmu. Oh, okay. So let's read this Rashi again. El Miata To Hedyotos B'nei Mamas Lo Yishalmu. That typically, I think this is how you read the Rashi. Typically, a Hedyot, when he judges Dinei Mamas, he does not need to pay if he makes a mistake. Or maybe not typically, actually.
No, I think what Rashi is saying is that why are some people pater? They're pater because they're Rabbanon, right? So Rabbanon are pater.
No, the Rabbanon are.
That's what Rashi is saying.
Meaning, once you have the Rabbanon backing, then you're pater because you're as if you're a mumcha.
Right. So mumcha must be pater.
Mumcha must be pater. Correct. Yeah.
Right. Which is not what's it's mashma from the Gemara. The Gemara seems to be saying that our Gemara seems to be saying lahafach. It seems to be saying now that they're not mumchim, they're pater from they're pater from paying. But Rashi points out that further on we learn no, it's the mumche that is pater. And here you're being maftir them, you're making them pater in that you are giving them reshut. Rashi has a more complicated view based on the fact that he knows the Gemara weiter than what it seems like straight on.
I think Rashi is just saying that Rashi. I think Rashi is actually not so relevant to the Shak Matari here. Rashi is addressing a question essentially, right? Rashi is addressing. We know in Lamed Gimel we say if someone's not a mumche, you're chayiv to pay. But here you are pater to pay because the Rabbanim are backing you. I think Rashi is addressing like a side issue essentially.
Yeah, he's bringing a kasha from the Gemara weiter.
So how do we understand the Gemara itself when it says El Meata To Lo Yishalmu? If that's the case, then if you make a mistake, you shouldn't have to pay. But and I think
you have to understand it. Knowing the Gemara weiter, you have to understand the way Rashi explains it.
Right, but the problem with what is this Elamiata saying? It's coming off of the fact that we were just satisfied with the idea that we can do loan disputes with mumchim, and the Gemara is challenging that
without mumchim.
Without mumchim, sorry, yeah, and the Gemara is challenging that conclusion, and it's saying Elamiata To Lo Yishalmu. If you make a mistake, then you wouldn't need to pay. Which again
causes problems. Yeah, Rashi is reading this whole svara of why they don't have to pay because of the Gemara in Lamed Gimel. We wouldn't. I mean, this is how Rashi works. We wouldn't know to read it that way if Rashi wasn't pointing this out.
I just don't know where these two steps take us, because the next line is ihachi. It goes to where we're going back to these two steps. I'm just not sure where these two sentences go. Like the next step is ihachi. We're getting into a different point. Like we're going to continue the Gemara, but it's going to go back to a different point. And I don't know where these two sentences leave us with.
I think ihachi means if it is so that by gezelot v'chavelot you need 3 mumchim, and by hodat v'alvot you need 3 hedyot, right? Then it should it goes on to say, okay, so let's say that's the din, right? That you need 3 mumchem by gezelot v'chavelot, and you need 3 hedyot by what you call it, by hodad v'alvot.
Right. That so see, it goes back to rewriting the Mishnah. It's a separate point. Like it's a separate thing. I don't.
Tartikatani. It should teach it in tarte means 2.
Yeah, Tarjum means 2. So it could have said it could have said dini mamas bishlosha bishlota hedyotos because chavelos b'shlosha mumchem, and that could have been the whole story.
Yeah,
right?
you don't even need the dine mamanot b'shlosha, or you could
No, it
either
would be dini mamas bishlosha hedyotos and chavelos b'shlosha mumchem. Right? It's not like you didn't need to do much more than that. It was adding a couple of words essentially is what the Gemara is asking.
Dine mamanot b'shlosha hedyotot, gezelot v'chavelot b'shlosha mumchem.
Right.
And,
and
from that, we would know that hodad v'alot are b'shlosha hedyot. Yeah.
Right. It would say it straight out. But it's shlosha lamali. Why do you need to say it twice? You could what you really could do is say
Dine mamanot b'shlosha hedyot, gezelot v'chavelot mumchem. You could have said that. You didn't need to say shlosha mumchem.
How would
you
it
could have said mumchem.
No, but you need to know that it's 3.
You said dine mamanot b'shlosha hedyotot.
The ode is right. The ode, right. So it's saying a further question. If you're gonna say that we can't say hedyotos essentially, if you don't want to go that route that I'm suggesting, well then at least just say shlosha once. Say dine mamanos gzelos chavelos is with 3. Don't add another sentence that it's dine mamanos is 3, because if you understand it as not including hadalas v'avos.
The od shlosha lam. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So you look at Rashi. Oh, ichada katani lamali. Ichada. If it's just one that we're talking about, ichada katani lamali lemisni trei zimni. If you're just teaching me one case here of the gzelos chavelos, then why do you need to say it 3 times? Hachi b'ay lemisni dini mamanos. You could just say dini mamanos shehein gzelos v'chavelos begimel, which are referring to gzelos v'chavelos that you need 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's those 2 questions. So how do we answer this?
Hello,
Tarti Katani.
Mishum the Rabbi Chanina Rab Acha Bare the Rab Ika Amar Midoraita Chad Nami Kasher. So Rava brings this whole thing in the name of these Rabbanan, this rabbi who's the son of this other rabbi, that Midoraita Chad Nami Kasher.
Yeah.
And this is actually, I believe, the halacha. Chad Nami Kasher. Shnei Amar Betzedek Tishpot Amitecha, right? So that's in the singular. Eila Mishum Yoshve Kranot Atu Betlata.
Ela Mishum Yoshikranos. So the reason why is the 1 and not good enough? Because of people are not reliable.
Because of people in the corner.
Exactly. This is like deja vu. Everyone watching this is like literally. If there's someone who's watched the last 3 weeks, literally they're just like, are they saying the same thing every single week? Like the same.
Or chazering. This is the thing with the Gemara is, in order to understand it, like you have to be in the sugya to understand what's going on.
For sure. Yeah. So then the Gemara continues. Other but plus milo habi yoshri karnos. If you have 3, how is that going to help you get out of the yoshri karnos issue, right? If people are, let's just say, stupid, let's just say the average person, then
3 times 0 is still 0.
Exactly. So the Gemara answers after the lesbu dechad the gamir. You're not going to have a situation where there's at least one person who has his head on his shoulders, essentially. Elamayata. So now we go back to that same question. Elamayata to lo yishalmu. And I didn't really understand it the first time we did this. Elamayata to lo yishalmu.
We should probably do the Rashis. We haven't done the Rashis.
Okay. But let's not go all the way like back up. Let's keep on this so we can get to the two dots here. Happy to go through it again, but let's go to the two dots.
Okay, let's go to the dots.
So wait, but let's go through Rashi. But there is a Chanami Kasher. That's the one we're up to. Tishbot lashon yachid. It says the pasuk says a lashon of tishbot, which is singular. The ain erev parashiyos kan there, and you can't say the idea of erev parashiyos here. Umasnisun vade tarti katani, and our Mishnah is definitely teaching us two things. Kedamar, like we've said. Umiu shlosha badas velos lav midaraisa ela midarabanan. But three with hadas velos is not daraisa, rather it's derabanan.
So he seems to be saying that when there's no, if you don't hold of Erev Parshiot.
No, I think he's saying there is no Erev Parshios here. I don't think he's saying. I don't know if he's
right, but he's saying that we are now in an opinion where there's no Erev Parshios.
That's not how I understand it. I understand it as saying that Erev Parshios does not apply to this pasuk of B'tzedek Tishbot Amisecha. That doesn't apply to this pasuk. That's how I understand it. Meaning, even within the interpretation of Erev Parshios, he does not agree.
It doesn't apply to this thing.
That's how I'm understanding. I don't know if I'm right or not. That's how I'm understanding it.
I don't think that's how you would write Erev Parshios Khan.
Khan. Here, there's no Erev Parshios in this pasuk.
There is. I'm not sure. I'm not sure which one he's saying. I think you could read them both ways, probably. What does
that mean?
It's coming to teach us two different things. It's teaching us that Gazelot v'Chavelot, it's three mumchim, and Hodat v'Olot, it's not with mumchim. Mm-hmm. Whether it's one or it's three Hediot, whatever.
Got it. But then the Rashi ends by saying, "Umi Shosha Badas Los Lav Midaraisa."
Ela Midarabana.
Oh, because Midaraisa is just beside Tishmas Amisecha. Okay.
Yeah, Midaraisa, and I believe this is the halacha, right? Midaraisa, you can have one person, but why we add two more? So it's not like we said before.
Got it. So Gzer Rishim Yoshe Kronos, Tagrin She'in Bakiyim Betiv Dinan. I think Tagrin literally means I think that means someone who does like business in the streets, like
Tajer. Tajer is Persian, and I believe
like
Arabic,
traders, like people who trade.
Merchants. Yeah,
merchants. Yes, I think that's like the official like translation, right? Tagrin, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wait, where were we? I lost it. Here we go. They don't know. They're not like a bucky in the laws. And they're going to make the innocent guilty and the guilty innocent. The gamir sheshama mechachamim umidayin hilchas din malva. They've heard. What does that mean? Like they've heard enough from they've learned enough, I guess. The people who can actually paskin.
I mean, they've like distributed cognition.
Right. Distributed cognition belaz. I see that now.
Yeah, distributed cognition belaz.
Perfect. Okay, so then Ela miat tolo yishalmu. The haber shus nachti afil midaraisa. That since it was given with so because they have permission to judge his case in midaraisa, then for sure they should be able to make. If they make a mistake, they shouldn't need to pay. But then the Gemara says, "Kol shekein defisha yoshrei kronos." I still don't understand this. I still don't understand the whenever the Gemara, both places where they say El Me'atol Isham, I don't know what it's getting at. But we can go back to it. Can we just finish the Gemara here?
Sure.
Because there's one more step here. And then we can go back to try to figure out what this means. I just want to say that we finished the Gemara.
Okay, no.
So the Gemara continues. Maybe it's connected, so maybe it's going to be a problem to continue. Let's see. Ma'ika bein Rava leRav Acha b'rei Rika. What's the difference between Rava and Rav Acha b'rei Rika? So who's Rava and who's Rav Acha b'rei Rika? What are we talking about? What did Rava say?
I thought Rava was the one who brought Ama Rava Tartiktani, Mishum the Rabbi Hanina Rav Acha Bare that.
All right, they brought him. So what does that mean? What's the difference? What is we're asking? Oh, here Rashi says LaRava. Ma'ika bein Rava. The Amar midaraisa plus I mean unless lay dishmul the Amar dinaim din. No wait, that's actually farther in the Gemara. Ma'ika bein Rava l'Rav Acha b'rei Rav Ika. Rava. Wait, did we quote Rava earlier? Actually,
I don't think we.
Oh wait. Ma'ika bein Rava l'Rav Acha b'rei Rav Ika. That was Rav Chanina. Rava quoted.
Rava Tartikatani.
Rava Tartikatani. Mishum Rav Chanina.
Oh, hold on. No. So it wasn't the Amar Rava Tartikatani. Now it brings a different opinion from Rava's. Mishum the Rabbi Hanina Bar Acha Bare the Rav Ika Amar Midioraita Chad Nami Kasher. So Rava says Tartikatani. He says no, Chad Nami Kasher. Rav Acha says Chad Nami Kasher. Rava says Tartikatani.
Oh. So what is Tartikatani?
It teaches
Let's go back to Tartikatani then. Let's go back to that Rashi.
Yeah.
Matzilame Mardini Mamanus. Tahainu Hadas Lavas B'Shosha. So Dini Mamanus is referring to Hadas Lavas B'Shosha called who, meaning you could have three that's any kind of person, even someone who's not a mumchem, who's not an expert. Because he has to become a mumchem. And Mishum the Chalukim B'Dineim Lo Kilo B'Chad Klal. And because they're different, we didn't want to include them into one shlosha, right? Because they're different. They're different. It's a different type of three, so we didn't want to say. That's why we had to split it up into two different threes, essentially, right?
There's two Rashis Tartikatani.
There is.
Yeah, there's one after it says Tartikatani va'od Tartikatani.
Oh, that's a good point. Okay, which one was I reading then? I was reading the.
You were reading the first one.
Right, but what's the first? Where's the first one in the Gemara? And where's the second one?
Okay, va'od shlosha lamali ela amarava tartikatani. Mishum. No. Okay. So here, when you go all the way back, right? After kol sheken ata.
Right. Ihachi tartikatani. I see that. Yeah.
Ihachi tartikatani. Right.
Right.
So first it explains Tartikatani, and then Rava comes and says, yeah, Tartikatani. And then Rav Acha says no, Chad Nami Kasher. What's Chazi saying? Chazi is saying much appreciated.
You thought he was coming to save the day.
I thought he was coming to save the day. I had to put my glasses on to find out Chazi wasn't saving the day.
Oh, so wait, did I not read it right? Meaning Mishum der v'chanina. Okay, I just realized we combined two people.
Yeah.
So Elam Rav Targad Mishum der v'chanina, because Rabbi Chanina is the one who says this idea of splitting that we need drisha v'chakir, right? We need to do the cross examination, but we don't need it actually because for those avos, because we don't want to hold people back from giving loans. So that's so the way Rava ends the way he concludes to understand what the Mishnah is saying.
Hold on, my mom is calling.
Go for it.
Sorry about that.
No problem. So basically, I think I'm understanding this better now. So Rava ends up landing with Tarti Katani, which he's saying that essentially we need to say the Mishnah is saying two different things. When it says Mamanos, it's talking about Shlosha non-Mumchim, and when it says Das V'Avlos, it's talking about Shlosha that are Mumchim. And then we continue the Gemara and say Rav Acha Rav Ika, that he says this whole different idea of really.
Is this the same Rav Acha that said before?
There was no Rav Acha before, was there? I don't think so.
No, I'm confusing Rabbi Chanina with
Correct. So there's Rava in the name of Rav Chanina, and then there's Rav Acha Rav Ika. So it's two separate opinions on how to understand this this Mishnah.
Yeah.
But basically what the Gemara is saying is at the end of the day, they both land in the same place. So they have different reasonings how they got there, right? One started with the fact that really you need 3 midaraisa on dine mamanos and dine nefashos, right? You need 3, but we ended up being more lenient. That way we encourage people to give out loans, right? And that's how you get to this place of where you don't have mumchim, but you have 3. And then Rav Acha Rav Ika, he starts with B'tzedek Tishbat Amisecha, that really B'daraisa 1 is good, but then we say, what about the Yoshvei Kranos? So we say, and we end up landing where you can have 3 who are not mumchim, right? So at the end of the day, they both land seemingly in the same place. So the Gemara is now going to ask, what is the nafkamina between these two opinions? Right? Like, who cares with how they got there? Like, what's the practical halachic difference between the two? So, but Amar Shmuel, Shnayim Shidanu Dinam Din.
Beit Din Chatzuf.
Oh, so that's Shmuel's opinion. Shmuel has an opinion that says that if 2 people try to judge a case, they're called like a bezdin chatzov, I guess, like a brazen bezdin.
Audacious,
yeah, exactly. So the Rava less laid the Shmuel. So Rava,
he says it ain't no din.
Wait, Rava would agree with that. Wouldn't Rava agree with that? Rava should agree with that. Why does he say Rava? Right, because Rava is of the opinion that everything really needs 3, but we're only lenient because of so people we encourage people to do
right,
do
but everything needs 3. Where we are lenient for 3 hedyot, but the Rabbanan weren't lenient to 2.
Oh, right. So right, Rava less late Okay, good. I read that wrong for some reason. The Racha Breder of Ika is late The Racha Breder of Ika who believes besides that Midaraisa you only need 1, then he would say 2 is fine. He wouldn't have a
He
problem
would
with
say
that.
it's a Beit Din Chatzov,
No,
but he
no,
would
wait.
say Dino Din.
Oh, wait? So Shmuel says it is a good din. Oh, he says it's a din, but it's still considered a chatzah. So it's like we're ripping on it, but it's still halachically it's still okay. Okay,
Halachically, ultimately, it's a
got it.
din. It's just a chutzpah.
Got it. So Rava doesn't believe in that because there's a limit to how lenient we're going to go, and Rav Acha Breder Iko would agree with it because his Ikra din you only need 1 midaraisa. Got it.
Yep.
And that ends the Gemara. We did it. But there's still one.
We got to the 2 dots.
Yeah, we got to do that. But there's the double step where it says Ihachitalu lo yishamu and kol shekain. I don't understand that on both parts, so we have to figure that out.
Yeah, I think we're gonna end up having to go learn the Gemara and Lamed Gimel.
Possibly.
Because what I've often found is when you try to cut it short, you end up spending more time trying to figure it out outside than when you just.
But I do feel like we have an understanding of the full Gemara here. Like besides for that one step, I feel like we have a grasp on the whole piece.
The only question is what's in Tal lo Yishalma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So it took us 4 weeks to finish like a full piece of Gemara. That was awesome.
It was. Is it a full piece? I mean, this is one of the longest. I mean, the Mishnah is really long.
Yeah, for sure.
And this for one sugya. I mean, it's not all one sugya, but for one shtickle Gemara, it's pretty.
Yeah,
long.
but it's really exciting. I don't think I've gone through a Gemara like this in about a decade, 9 years around. Like
me too.
Yeah, so that was really fun and special. So thank you.
We should say Shechianu. Did you buy some fruit you haven't eaten in a year?
We really should. know. It's really beautiful. Like I've learned Gemara over the past several years, but I learned it like you read like the CNN. That's not learning it. It's not like it's not like learning it properly. So to sit down with a chavrusa and really go through it's really special. It's great.
Very special.
Yeah.
Yeah. When Yom Hadin happens, I can say I learned with Donnie.
And then you have to say, do you know what yeshiva he went to? You have to do the whole thing.
Do you know what yeshiva he went to? Hilarious.
All right.
Okay.
We continued.
It was nice talking to you, Mr. Donnie, sir.
Likewise.
Don't do anything I would do.
Absolutely not.
And everybody in Eretz Yisrael should be safe. Everyone in Iran should be safe. Everyone in the United States should be safe.
Amen.
And Mashiach should come. And actually, I mean, I don't know if you listened last night, but that little shtickle Torah that of the Yanuka was actually kind of impactful on me last night. So
I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. The Yanuka is pretty cool. There's a reason I got his picture up on my wall.
Nice.
Yechia Melech.